It's the Sittin Sportside podcast, exclusively on 1045theteam.com.
Yeah.
It is 1045theteam.com in the Sittin Sportside podcast, and it's going solo, riding solo, as Jason Derulo would say. I'm Eric Hanneman here on 1045theteam.com. And you know what? Since I'm going solo, there's going to be a slew of things to talk about. What an opening song to go with, but we got to play a song to go along with this because, you know, sometimes it's fun to hear someone talk for about 20, 25 minutes and have absolutely nothing else coming in and just hearing this guy's voice. Sometimes that's fun, but at least maybe now you guys can have a little bit of a thing behind my voice that maybe hear, you know, this is actually something good to listen to. I'm at Eric H1045. I'm Eric Hanneman once again. And look, stay with me to the end of this podcast. I'm going to tease a couple things here. Walt Clyde Frazier, no need to apologize. And man, this might be the last time I do it before my previews of the MLB season, but Brody, Mets fans, love this guy. Love Brody. But we're starting off in the NFL. There's a slew of things. Go NFL and those other things that I tease. Hopefully I did a good enough job. You can skip ahead, of course, because this is a podcast, so you can do what you want here. But we're starting off with the Green Bay Packers hiring Matt LaFleur, the Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator, to their head coaching position to take over as the quarterback. He was of course, there for Matt Ryan when he won the MVP in 2016. And of course, he was with Sean McVay and Coach Jared Goff last season. But this previous season, the one we're kind of currently in, right? The playoffs are still going on. He coached the offense of the Tennessee Titans, which wasn't that great, right? 25th in total yards and 29th in passing. And a guy like Derrick Henry didn't find his feet until the last few weeks of the season. And in my personal opinion, that onus goes on a guy like Matt LaFleur. Here's the reason that this is a okay hire, though, for the Packers and where we're at this point. You have to figure out, you have to give somebody like Aaron Rodgers basically someone that he can, I don't want to say push around, but in a way, it is pushing him around. They need a guy that he can come in and really just let Aaron Rodgers kind of have a say in the matter. LaFleur's 39 years old. He's a young enough guy to be like, you know what? I can push. I can yield to what Aaron Rodgers wants. That's what it comes down to. Because Mike McCarthy kind of stayed his welcome, not for the Packers per se, but he stayed his welcome with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers wanted a guy that he could possibly push around. He wants to be able to call his own plays and be able to do things that he wants to do. You go back to the things that we heard about this past season, and I think may have gotten a little underreported, is about 50%. I think that might be a number that's coming to my mind. I'm not 100% sure here. But about 50% of the plays, Aaron Rodgers audibled at the line of scrimmage. So Mike McCarthy, mind you, a Super Bowl head coach, winning head coach, a guy who was able to get to the playoffs, a guy who had a record of 135, 85, and 2 in his 13 years in Green Bay. You're not going to listen to him anymore? The guy who takes over the plays a couple years ago, and maybe I'm wrong here, but wasn't it the RELAX year and McCarthy decided to take the plays over? I might be wrong there, but McCarthy, when he started calling the plays, it got a little bit better. And you're telling me this season, the season where you struggled, and the talent wasn't necessarily there, right? Nelson's gone. Randall Cobb was injured for most of the season. Marquez Valdez-Smith or whatever. You can't even name half the people because the weapons really weren't there. Jimmy Graham is an overrated weapon at this point. Good weapon, don't get me wrong. Good tight end weapon, but he's not going to get you enough. And so I get that the weapons weren't necessarily there for Aaron Rodgers this year. Ty Montgomery had to be traded because of the things that happened. You're really relying on Aaron Jones. So the weapons right there weren't necessarily there for Aaron Rodgers. You can blame that too. But the fact that you're audibling half of your offensive coordinator or head coach or the guy calling the plays, it doesn't bode well for me. And Matt LaFleur is a guy that maybe come in and you work closer with Aaron Rodgers and you let him pick what he wants to run. And that's what it comes down to me. More than just, this is a guy that coached with Sean McVay and coached Matt Ryan to a Super Bowl championship. Or excuse me, almost Super Bowl championship, but to an MVP award. It's less that to me than more of a guy that is young enough and Aaron Rodgers maybe could push him around. I don't know about necessarily push around, but use him as his guy. This is his guy, Rodgers. Not being reported that way per se. That's how I feel, though. This is a position of where, look, Rodgers needed to get his guy, and he can push him around. A guy who interviewed for that position, though, was Josh McDaniels, of course. And he has said that the book is closed and that he's no longer going to be pursuing any head coaching positions. He's going to stay in New England. Is this a surprise to anybody? I don't think so. I mean, he probably was doing his due diligence to get a prestigious position like Green Bay and get a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. But come on, this guy is going to be the next head coach of the New England Patriots. Does anyone else think that that's not the case? I don't know when that's going to be. I don't know when Bill Belichick is going to step down or retire or go somewhere else possibly. Who knows? I don't even know what Bill Belichick's next move is in terms of football. All I know is that he's going to be the head coach of the New England Patriots for as long as he wants to be the head coach of the New England Patriots. And Josh McDaniels did not go to the Colts, who are a playoff team right now. A playoff team right now with a really good quarterback, top 5 quarterback in the league, Andrew Luck. If he didn't go there, and he's not going to go to Green Bay to coach Aaron Rodgers. Not that there's no report out there that was Green Bay's number 1 option, McDaniels. But if you're not going to go coach Luck, you're not going to coach Aaron Rodgers, you're staying in New England because you're the heir apparent. You're the next guy to be the head coach of the New England Patriots, and you're not willing, or I guess maybe you're not ready to move on from Tom Brady. You want to be there for Tom Brady until he retires, which we don't even know when that's going to be. So if anyone else has anything else to say about this, at EricH1045, tweet at me. McDaniels is the next head coach of the New England Patriots. That's my personal opinion. When that's going to be, I have absolutely no idea. Not surprised by the McDaniels move. Bruce Arians, though, he is the next head coach of the Buccaneers, is finalizing a deal as I'm speaking right now. But by the time you're listening to this, he probably is already solidified as the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, you know, he left the coaching last year, right? It doesn't seem that long ago, or seems longer ago, but he was the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals a year ago. And he decided to spend this past season working as a game analyst for CBS. He, quote-unquote, retired after last year. And now he's already back in Tampa Bay, coaching for his friend Jason Licht, the general manager there, who was the vice president of player personnel in 2013 for the Arizona Cardinals. And Jameis Winston had attended a lot of Bruce Arians football camps as a youth in Birmingham, Alabama. The Utes, my cousin Vinny. Look, I love Bruce Arians. And so this first part about him is kind of something that criticism he may not get from anybody else. Maybe just me. But if we're going to be like, oh, well, what is he stepping away the game for to Urban Meyer in Florida? Urban Meyer becomes the analyst after winning, national championships with the Florida Gators. And then he becomes Ohio State head coach and everyone rips him, especially Florida fans. Well, shouldn't Arizona Cardinal fans feel the same way about Bruce Arians after going 3-13? After he retires and a year later, he's the head coach of another football team? Like I said, don't get me wrong, Bruce Arians is one of my favorite coaches. I love the Colts. That Colts years is magical to me. I'm a Jets fan, but I loved Peyton Manning growing up, so I root for the Colts, and I love Andrew Luck, and so I still root for the Colts. I'm not saying that's going to change. If another quarterback comes in, my personal opinion, though, or my personal premise right now, though, I just love the Colts and that Colts rookie season of Andrew Luck, and what Bruce Arians did stepping in for Chuck Pagano when he was sick was absolutely amazing. And I think he won Coach of the Year that year, right? But why is this any different than the Urban Meyer situation? Cardinals should be just as mad at Bruce Arians as Florida Gator fans were at Urban Meyer. This is a guy that had this team as the top couple of seats, had bye weeks, had them going and being one of the teams to beat in the NFC West for a bunch of years, and it's only been a year removed because he had quote-unquote health problems or heart problems. He retired, but a year later, he's a head coach of another football team. Cardinals fans have every right to be upset, but getting down to the basics of it, this is it, Jameis. Right? Isn't this it for Jameis Winston? I know he could have an opportunity elsewhere if it doesn't work out this season, but if you can't make things work with the guy that you had as a youth quarterback, football camp when you were younger in Alabama, if you can't do it this year, your career could be gone. And look, people don't think Dirk Cutter was good enough as a head coach there offensively. Are we forgetting what Ryan Fitzpatrick did with the weapons of Deshaun Watson and Mike Evans, among some others? Let's not forget that this was an explosive offense to start the season against the Saints defense that at the time was getting a lot of heat, but overall the whole season the Saints defense turned into an actually pretty good defense. So why are we not applauding that a little bit more. And I know Fitzpatrick kind of fizzled out and Winston ends up winning the job, but Dirk Cutter's offense was able to work with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Why wasn't able to work with Jameis Winston? So anyone who's telling me that Jameis Winston didn't do enough because of Dirk Cutter, that's blasphemous. I mean, the guy throws a lot of interceptions when he's in the games. Like, he turns the ball over a lot. And I like Jameis Winston. I liked him coming out of college. I liked him a couple years ago in his sophomore season in the league when they were 9-7, I believe, that year. So he's showing flashes, and I don't like the off the field stuff. That's another reason to not really want Jameis Winston on your roster anymore. But my confidence in Jameis Winston is as low as my confidence in Bruce Arians is high. And so Bruce Arians can get the job done 100% as the head coach. But that means, to me, this is Winston's last chance, definitely in Tampa Bay, but even to be a starting quarterback in the National Football League. He'll probably get an opportunity elsewhere with the scarcity of the position, let's be honest. People are going to want to give somebody a chance. If he doesn't work out this year, he could be a name that floats out for the New York Giants. But look, this is it, Jameis. Bruce Arians is coming in, and if you guys can't, it's a tough division, don't get me wrong, but if Bruce Arians can't do it, I think it's time to move on from Jameis Winston, and he might not necessarily be the guy anywhere else. Speaking of Dirk Cutter, he and Mike Mularkey, they're returning to the Falcons to join Dan Quinn's staff. Of course, Dan Quinn cleared house in Atlanta after the season, and it didn't take long for Dirk Cutter or Mark Mularkey to get back on the staff. And let me just say this. The Falcons were a disappointing team this season, but are they really going to get better by this? Maybe. I mean, Dirk Cutter as offensive coordinator has been good, but what's the difference between the 2 years, right? They had a decent offensive output. Like, Calvin Ridley was good. Julio Jones is not like he was bad this season. They didn't have Devontae Freeman for a lot of the year. And Tevin Coleman's fine replacement, and he won't be on the Atlanta roster, I don't think, this year. But how can you really fault the previous regime in Atlanta offensively when you didn't have your number one running back for basically the entire season? Now, I think Dirk Cutter, he's proven that he can be an amazing offensive coordinator, similar to how like Todd Bowles and Rex Ryan are more known to be the best of the best in terms of defensive coordinators. But to be like, Steve Sarkisian, sorry, man. You're gone, babe, basically. Because you didn't have your number one running back the entire season. I think that's what really comes down to me is, really? Really? But I guess it is what it is. Dirk Cutter served as the Atlanta Falcons offensive coordinator from 2012 to 2014, so he's back. But that was under a different head coach. That was Greg Smith, I believe, as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons at that time. So he's back. Darren Bevel was in that discussion. Dan Quinn, who coached with him in the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks. So it's interesting. I'm going to fact check myself on the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons during that time. I believe it was Greg something, but you have good music to listen to. I'll fact check myself on that head coach because I feel like it was wrong. But look, it's a good move, but I think it proves another thing going back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that, look, we didn't have a good enough offensive coordinator for Jameis Winston. This guy got a job right away. Not only that, they had to punch out Steve Sarkisian and a perfect staff to have it. It was Mike Smith. Did I say Greg Smith? I said Greg Smith. Mike Smith. I got the last name right. But he was the head coach last time Dirk Cutter was in Atlanta, and he served as defensive coordinator under Dirk Cutter. So there's just a lot of connections there, and he's currently unemployed, but his former head coach is not. And I think that's enough about Dirk Cutter. Speaking of that, remember I said Bruce Arians left Arizona? Well, Arizona, they made their hire. Weird. Cliff Kingsbury. So Kingsbury coaches a long time at Texas Tech. They decide not to retain him. He takes an offensive coordinator position, which is a step down from head coach at USC. And then there was a weird 24 hours where is he listed as the team? He's looking for other jobs, but is he listed on the website for USC? And it turns out it doesn't matter because the Arizona Cardinals have pulled the trigger. They have hired that head coach here. It's interesting. He's worked with a lot of top-notch quarterbacks, right? He worked with Patrick Mahomes, Case Keenum, Davis Webb, and I don't think that's top-notch. That doesn't even deserve to be in the conversation. The main one being Patrick Mahomes is the big look. What he was able to, did at Texas Tech with the guy. He's worked with top-notch quarterbacks, so that is what it is. Patrick Mahomes said about him, I think he can be a great NFL head coach. He has the work ethic, the passion for the game. They love the sport, so I know he'll be able to relate to quarterbacks. He'd put in the work, and now it's just about finding where he needs to be at, and where that is with Josh Rosen. It's the right hire in terms of what the Cardinals were going to do. I said this before, when Steve Wilks got fired after 3-13 season, 1 year after being hired, after being the defensive coordinator for Ron Rivera in Carolina. Sure, it's unfair. Guys got to get paid the money he was owed anyway. But my point is, it was unfair in that way, but they needed to do the same thing that we were seeing with Sean McVay, Matt Nagy. The Jets are trying to do it with whoever they hire. Cleveland's trying to do it with whoever they might hire. And we're hearing that the Cleveland Browns are looking at, that's the Broncos. They're looking at Vic Fangio and Mike Munchak. So we'll see how that goes there. But I don't know where the Browns are going to go. And that's where Mike McCarthy, who I talked about a little bit earlier, could come into play. So it's interesting. I think this is the right move, like I said. Josh Rosen, they needed to make the move to get their head coach to work with their young quarterback like Josh Rosen, who's very similar to me to Jared Goff. A guy that really didn't get a lot of hype this year because of other guys like Sam Darnold, Josh Allen. But look, Josh Rosen wasn't good this year. But besides David Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, what do they have around him? Offensive line wasn't as good as it used to be. So a new head coach, a new run of certain areas, I'll take it. I like this hire for them, even though people are very, very skeptical about what Cliff Kingsbury can do in general as a head coach, but especially in the NFL. He'll have the chance to prove it. Cardinals, it's a good thing to do. It's going to be interesting too now, because now it was like Nick Bosa was going to be the number 1 overall pick. But did the Cardinals trade down? Let Dwayne Haskins, someone who wants Dwayne Haskins, trade up to get number 1, and they take an offensive player in the top 10? Problem is, what offensive player is there? You don't really have a running back to take in the top 10 this year. You don't really have a wide receiver to take in the top 10 this year. So I don't know how far you trade down or where you got it. But I don't think you're really going to get an offensive player in the top 10. Just take Nick Bosa and move on if you're Cliff Kingsbury. But we'll see what happens there. I like the hire, but it's risky. Know that it's a risky hire, though. You know what I mean? I like the chance of it because you're the Cardinals in 3-13 with nothing else to prove. You need to have Josh Rosen right now. You have Rosen, use it right now. That's why I like the hire. Cliff Kingsbury himself, jury's still out for me. I haven't seen enough in his college tenure either. If we're analyzing that 100%. Speaking of college football, Trevor Lawrence, congratulations to the Clemson Tigers. I had said, and I'm wrong here, I had said that this was the most open and shut college football playoff I had seen. Alabama was going to get the job done, but they got their butts kicked by the Clemson Tigers in the championship. Congratulations to them. I'll eat my words there. Now, Trevor Lawrence, though, can't play in the NFL until at least 2021, right? He's a freshman. How about Oliver Luck, Andrew Luck's father, who is, I believe, the CEO of the XFL? He's the commissioner. And he has said that they would think about taking someone straight out of high school, but, maybe not. But how about a guy who's played in college for a year? Well, he said that he would not rule out taking a player who played a year of college football. And let's say, this is a quote, he isn't eligible academically, which happens, or a player who's 2 years out of college and is transferring and would have to sit out a year. A lot of guys don't want to do that. So they're in a position to be able to take players who wouldn't be eligible to play in the NFL. But that's an option that we have, and we're going to look at long and hard. There are a lot of very good college players after a year or two who may not want to have that third year of college football, may need to earn a little money and support the family. That's not uncommon as well, end quote. Now, the league will pay salaries, according to Luck, $250,000 to $300,000 for the top players. Example, quarterbacks, of course, for what could be a 5-month commitment. So that is a good chunk of change, especially for someone looking for money. And it's weird. We hear about it all the time about these NBA players saying, we want to go straight to the NBA, or the college basketball players, from 18 years old. And we see that happen a lot more. You get the freaks like LeBron who do it. Kobe was able to do it in some capacity. Of course, you have the guys like Sebastian Telfair and some others that really doesn't necessarily work for. Dwight Howard it did work for, but so why do we not hear more in football? Oh, I need the money. There it is for you, $200,000 to $300,000 if you want to step out for a year. You know, you've seen other guys. Emmanuel Mudiay did this. Some other players did it. They go play in China for basketball and then enter the draft. Right? Brandon Jennings did it in Italy. So it's interesting. We don't hear, though, as much in the NFL for football players, for NCAA and football players. And now you have these other leagues, the XFL, amongst a lot more other leagues than you ever had before. And it can become more common, especially if the XFL decides to do it. What is it, the American Football League? I don't even know. There's another league out there. There's going to be options. And if you're looking to really do your best to make it a product people want to watch, then you're going to try to get Trevor Lawrence or other people to come and do it. Problem is, are you risking your $1 million payday to play in the XFL? Where is it better to play if you're trying to stay healthy enough for that draft? The XFL or college football? Or just sit out? I hope this doesn't encourage more people just to plainly sit out for a year and just join the draft. We don't really see that much often, but we do see it in the bowl games. In the XFL, if people are going to sit out in the bowl games, then why be obligated to play in the XFL for longer than you would necessarily have to in terms of college football? So it's an interesting argument, especially if you know somebody who's going to be in that particular predicament. Walt Clyde Frazier. Here we are to the things that we teased, right? Walt Clyde Frazier has said he was quite flabbergasted by the response to his Kevin Durant criticism. Of course, back over the summer, he went on a SiriusXM radio show. This was in August, saying, Durant, as a great player as he is, I would still hold back because, man, he joined a team that really didn't need him. You know what I mean? He's right there with LeBron, probably will surpass LeBron as the best player in the game soon, but for him doing that, I still don't give him the full credit that he probably would have deserved if he stayed with the Oklahoma City Thunder and won a title with that team, end quote, Walt Clyde Frazier. Now, he's speaking out now about it because the Knicks and the Warriors played on January 8th. And he said he called him right up there with LeBron James. And you can hear from the quote, he did. And he said he was flabbergasted. He was surprised of what people were saying him and calling him. And he didn't know the magnitude of those comments. And so he's not walking them back necessarily now. But there's no need, if you're Clyde Frazier, to walk them back. There's no need to apologize. There's no need to say anything about... He said he meant no disrespect. That's not walking him back. He just said meant no disrespect. There's no need to do anything about these comments. Because these comments are correct. That move, Kevin Durant joining a 73-win team that was one win away from the title. And I get they lost the title. I get LeBron had one of the best comebacks and Kyrie hit one of the biggest shots and the Cavaliers win that title. And, obviously without Bogut the last two games, without Draymond Green in Game 5, it could have been a different thing. It's still a 73-win team. The all-time best record in the regular season of any team. All of the people were coming back, basically. You need to join that team to win the championship. That will forever. Asterisk is probably the right word. Give an asterisk to these two titles for Kevin Durant. It might not look that way when we're talking about this 20 years from now. We'll probably always say, oh, Durant won 2 championships. He was the MVP of both. I get that that's probably what's going to happen. But let's not bury what Clyde Frazier said. Walt Clyde Frazier said. These were 100% correct things to say. He's right. He's 100% right. The title, if he stayed in Oklahoma City Thunder, if it did happen, is different than when he leaves. There will forever be a stigma around him. That's the word I use. I don't necessarily use the word asterisk, but I'm fine with it. I'm fine with that word. Those titles have asterisks. Fine. I say there will always be a stigma around Kevin Durant. You can't escape what you did. Even though you're a 2-time NBA champion and you're a 2-time NBA Finals MVP now, it doesn't change the fact that you left after being up 3-1 on those same Warriors team. You don't win that series, and you go back to that. You go to that team. You go to that team. You win your 2 titles, but you're still with probably going to be Hall of Famers too, and Steph Curry. I guess the jury could be out on whether Draymond Green or Andre Iguodala or Klay Thompson are going to be Hall of Famers. My point is, this was an all-time great team without Kevin Durant. So just because Kevin Durant comes in does not make it that much more of an all-time great team. Sure, it might make it better of a team, But you're not telling me that those two championships that they win, they couldn't have won without Durant, because that's 100% not true. Now, winning the MVP helps him a lot of those championships. But Clyde Frazier does not need to apologize about anything he said there, because it was all true. All true. I get the response from it, but it's all true. And I love hearing it from an actual NBA player, so I can say, you know what? Even though people might label that as a bitter old-timer basketball guy, I love hearing it from him because it proves that it's true. 100% true, and that I'm not crazy for thinking it and forever thinking it. Now, I don't know what would it take if he goes. He needs. It's funny. We don't know what's going to happen this season, right? But he needs that LeBron title now. LeBron got the 2 titles in Miami, and that one that LeBron wins against those 73-9 Warriors team. That is the one that he claims makes him the greatest player of all time. Fine, debate about that. Not a huge fan of that comment, but whatever. What are you going to do? But he did that with Cleveland. Durant needs that now. Doesn't necessarily have to be with his hometown team per se, which would be the Washington Wizards. Doesn't have to be anything like that. But he needs that title now. He needs that LeBron title. He needs that LeBron Cleveland title, excuse me. Could it be with the Knicks? Who knows? But he needs to leave, go somewhere else, and have minimal help. Not that LeBron had minimal help. He still had Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, among others who are better than people ever are going to want to give credit for. But he needs that LeBron title. I don't know who he's going to be paired with in New York if he leaves. But maybe it's with LeBron. And in LA, who knows? He needs that LeBron Cleveland title to make him get that asterisk off him, but those still two will always have asterisks, just like LeBron's will have somewhat of an asterisk of being with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh those 2 years, especially because one of them they shouldn't have won, and he was bailed out in that game. The big shot, again, by Ray Allen, not by LeBron James. That will always stay with LeBron James, too. The biggest shot in the Cleveland series against the Warriors, where they won down 3-1, though, in Game 7 was the shot by Kyrie Irving. So there's certain things, I don't necessarily call them asterisks, but there's certain stigmas that will stick with NBA players that happen. LeBron will always be a 3-time player that everyone thinks is one of the best of all time, and I agree. He's definitely top 3 of basketball players. That's the first time I've ever said it out loud that he's top 3. Surprisingly enough. Hate at me, at EricH1045 on Twitter. But there's stigmas that will hang with somebody, and Durant's, no doubt, is that he left a Thunder team that had talent. Let's not mince that either. That had a lot of talent. That was up 3-1 on those same Warriors to go play for those Warriors, and that's how he got his titles. That's a stigma that he'll have to carry deep into his retirement, and we're talking about the best of all time. Brody Van Wagenen, and as I mentioned this at the top of the broadcast, the top of the podcast, I should say. It's not a broadcast, it's a podcast. As I mentioned, this might be the last time I talk about Brody Van Wagenen and the Mets before I do my previews, because I think I've praised them enough, especially on the podcast. I might speak it if I'm ever on Levac and God's Big Board Sports filling in. I might bring it up as well on the free 104.5 The Team app, that is. But here on 104.5theteam.com and the Sittin Sportside podcast, this is the last I think I will talk about Brody Van Wagenen. And man, this guy is doing a good job. Not only a good job, I think a great job with what's going on right now with this team in the Mets. We already know what he did, bringing in Robinson Cano and Edwin Diaz for the bullpen, among a couple other things that he did. But he brings in, more recently, Keon Broxton to play center field and be the backup or the guy, I don't know, of Juan Lagares. I think he's an upgrade. He's Juan Lagares and then some. Like, he's a better hitter, even though he's hovers around 220. He was a 2020 guy a couple years ago. 20 home runs, 24 stolen bases, something like that. So he's got power, he's got speed, and he's a heck of a fielder. Probably one of the better outfielders in all of baseball. Probably better than Juan Lagares, in my personal opinion. But not that Lagares is a bad center fielder. I'm just saying that Keon Broxton is a really good center fielder, and if he's bringing you more pop than Juan Lagares is, maybe Broxton's your guy in center field. We also bring in J.D. Davis, a guy who had 364 in AAA last year. Or something around there, around the 360s in AAA last year. I know it's the Pacific Coast League. It's a really hitter-friendly league, the PCL is, but he did okay in his time with the Houston Astros when he was up in the major leagues last year, too. So not only is it great numbers in the minor leagues, but his 2018 career stats in Major League Baseball. Nothing to write home about. The average isn't there. But he's got that home. He's got you know what? I take it back, I guess. You know, the MLB numbers, and there's a decent sample size there, aren't fantastic. So maybe not Maybe not the slugging percentage you want, maybe not the average you want in the major leagues, but I still like it from what you've seen in the minor leagues. Because look, when people come up, they aren't necessarily themselves right away. There's two separate things, right? They don't have the book on you, so you absolutely go nuts when you shouldn't have on Halberoa. And then there's people that struggle, like Alex Bregman, when he comes up initially and then gets really good. I'm not saying J.D. Davis is Alex Bregman by any means, but the struggles in the major leagues, look, we know what he can do in the minor leagues. And you didn't give up much to get him. He's depth for you at both third base and first base, even though you want your first baseman to be Peter Alonso. So the depth is great because Todd Frazier, who knows what happens with him? He could get injured. So that is another great move. Broxton, J.D. Davis. And that's what I really like about what Brodie Van Wagenen is doing, is that he is going out and making moves and getting people that he views as potential fixes, but it didn't cost much. He doesn't lose anything else. So he didn't need to trade Noah Syndergaard to get somebody else. You know what I mean? And that's what I really like about him. So I look at their depth chart, and if I'm putting personally Keon Broxton in center field. Conforto and Nimmo, I think that without having the weight of the offense on Nimmo's shoulders, he can play more like he did at the beginning of the season than he did at the end of the season. Forever, I thought that he was going to be an okay outfielder. And then that power that came there was something that I did not see coming last season. But I'm starting to feel like that Brandon Nimmo is going to finally get what he's going to be. And that is a leadoff type guy that could have a 404 on base percentage like he had last year. 17 home runs are nice, but if he can be your leadoff guy and have the 400 on base, that's huge for guys that follow, like Michael Conforto, like Peter Alonso potentially, like Robinson Cano. Add Keon Broxton to the lower part of your lineup. That's pop where you can get stolen bases where you can get it. Wilson Ramos, a great addition as a catcher. And the defense behind you that you get with a guy like Keon Broxton really helps you when you have pitchers like Jacob deGrom, Noah Syndergaard, and Zach Wheeler. There was one other move that I believe happened. The Mets brought in some starting pitching depth, I believe. I forgot exactly who it might have been, and I will get on that real quick for you. But look, I really think that that the moves that the Mets have made make them a really amazing competitor, and that NL East is going to be very interesting. They brought in Hector Santiago, the lefty from Chicago, who pitched with the White Sox last season, as depth, and he's good depth. He's good depth, and that's what I feel like is a big underrated thing that Brodie Van Wagenen has done, is he's brought in depth of actual proven major leaguers. They're not the guys that people are really going to hop out of their chairs for, but their depth, they're a lottery ticket like a J.D. Davis, and you didn't have to give up much, and Keon Broxton, and they're not guys that you can necessarily have to say, you know what, I got to spend the whole ranch on them. You gave up minimal things, and it looks good. And Jets fans, real quick, Jets, Jets. While we don't know who you're signing for your head coach, which should be Mike McCarthy in my personal opinion, Adam Gase is an okay option as well. They've interviewed former Bucs offensive coordinator Todd Monken as well as Eric Bieniemy too. But I think that should be Mike McCarthy. But Jets fans, Todd Bowles no longer unemployed. The aforementioned Bruce Arians to the Bucs brings Todd Bowles as the defensive coordinator for JPP in that Bucs defense. We all knew it was going to happen. We all knew Todd Bowles was going to get a job as defensive coordinator. Well, now, thank goodness for Jets fans, it won't be in the AFC. That's probably the best thing that you could get, that the fact that it won't come back to bite you per se. Not that the firing would come back to bite you. There's no reason to keep Todd Bowles as your head coach. And he wasn't going to stick on as your DC regardless. My point is, though, you don't have to play him every single year. So that's good for if you're the Jets fans. And I think that should be Mike McCarthy. So once again, on Twitter, I'm at EricH1045. I believe Mike James is at Mike James 1045 on Twitter. I could be wrong. It's something like that. He changed his Twitter, so good for him. He'll be probably back on me on another podcast coming soon within the next week or so. But for Eric Hanneman, that's me. Thank you for listening to the Sittin Sportside podcast. Stay tuned stay focused to the 1045theteam.com page for all the articles. You can download the free 1045 The Team app. All our blog posts will all be there. Tom Gozlowski You guys know him as Gaz. Jeff Levesque, you guys know him as Levesque. Of course, Roger Weiland and Chris Honorado will have a nice bunch of blog posts for you, as well as Brian Mariano, the closer. As well, you can stay tuned to 1045theteam.com. Podcast tabs and click on Sittin Sportside Podcast. That's where you find all of our podcasts, and that will take you to a 1045 The Team Sittin Sportside Podcast exclusive playlist, and that's on youtube.com/team1045 if you want to go straight to YouTube, where we have all our previous YouTube podcasts. And let me tell you this, we had a great interview with Steve Heitner, the guy who played Kenny Banya. That's gold, Jerry. If you guys know that character, he does a sports betting podcast now that you can listen to that on those pages that I had mentioned there, as well as interviews from the Hall of Fame Classic. And if we're still here and we're ready to go, we might be able to get in the Hall of Fame Classic again. And you guys, tweet at us at Arians1045 when that comes out of who might be there. I think a lot of people might have questions for some of the guys. Like, these are Hall of Fame type players. Some of them are more of the obscure players, but it's always a fun event. Those interviews, including one that we really, really, really liked with Ozzie Smith and Eddie Murray, both separate. Those are up there as well. If you've missed any of those, it's old, right? It's old stuff, but it's still good. It's still good news. Like, there's a lot of things they talk about in today's game, not necessarily centric to the 2018 MLB season. So there's really fun stuff on there, as well as our opinions. Even if they've dated, there's a lot of fun stuff that Mike James and I have argued about with other guests on the Sittin Sportside Podcast as well. So thank you for listening to the Sittin Sportside Podcast right here on 1045theteam.com. I will see you next time on the next edition of the Sittin Sportside Podcast.
Shine in the nighttime, I'm a vampire, but I don't bite. Come inside when it's daylight, but please don't waste my time.